I hope you guys liked my Harley Quinn makeup tutorial from the new Suicide Squad movie. If you missed that video and you want to see how to get this look, click right here to watch that video now. And this video is all about the costume, the wig, the props, and how to DIY all of it so that you can have your own Harley Quinn costume. I am all about the details when it comes to costume making. This is going to be a long video. So if you're just dropping by to see how to dye a wig or how to make the shirt or whatever, I've split this video up into a bunch of different sections, so you can find time codes in the description box below for each different section. So I'm excited. I guess let's just get started. We got a lot to cover. You can make this costume and I will show you how.
Let's start this one off by dyeing and styling my Harley Quinn wig. So we have some supplies here. We have the acrylic ink that we will be using, spray bottles, alcohol, gloves, and of course our wig. I forgot to take video of what this wig looked like before I split it up into different sections for dyeing. So here are the photos of what it looked like originally. While this wig is super pretty just how it comes, it doesn't quite look like Harley's hair just yet. So it's time to start mixing up my dye. First, pour your ink into one of the spray bottles. I have pretty small bottles of ink, so I just use the entire bottle. And then I will add rubbing alcohol to the spray bottle. The ratio of alcohol to ink is really up to you. The more alcohol you add, the lighter the color will turn out in the end. So if you want a richer color, use less alcohol. If you want a lighter color, dilute the ink down with more alcohol. And once your potion is all mixed together, start spraying it on your wig. You want to make sure that the section that you're dyeing is super saturated in this ink alcohol mix. So make sure you rub it all the way through and coat every single little hair. And then you're going to wait for the ink to completely dry. This usually takes about an hour, so be patient. The longer you keep it on there, the better it will look in the end. Once it's dry, rinse the ink out with water and let it dry again. You can see here that the color turned out way lighter than the actual ink itself. That's because I used a lot of alcohol in my mix, because the new Harley's hair isn't as bright red as it has been in the past. Still, I decided to do a second coat of red on that pigtail, following all the same steps from before. Once that pigtail dried, I rinsed it out and dried it again. I mixed up my blue dye. This time I did the ratio about 1:1 to make the color a little more saturated. Then I just sprayed my dye all over the pigtail the same way as the red side. Make sure you cover your table or your surface that you're working on, because this ink mix will stain everything it touches. I have 2 trash bags taped onto my table to protect it from the ink. I know it looks like this wig is split into 2 sections, one for each pigtail, but it's actually split into 3, and you will see why in just a second. But for now, finish dyeing it, let it dry, rinse it out, and dry it again. It should look something like this when you're done. So now I'm going to curl the pigtails. All of the wigs from Got the Polluted Wigs are heat resistant, so you can curl them, straighten them, style them however you want. I would just recommend being mindful of the temperature so you don't make it too hot and it doesn't damage your wig. Just keep it on a low to medium heat setting and you should be good. If you're unsure if it's too hot, you can always spot check it in a place that's less visible, like in a layer underneath in the back, just to see how the wig reacts to the heat. Not all synthetic wigs are heat resistant, so check with the company that you bought yours from to make sure that you can curl it safely. So you can see I'm just curling them like normal hair and then holding the curls in my hand for a second so they cool down and stay in that curled position. And then I blast them with hairspray and pin them up out of the way. The new Harley has 2 long blonde pieces of hair that come down in front of her face, so I'm going to go ahead and let those down now. And then we are going to get to the 3rd section that I mentioned earlier. Wigs that aren't designed for pigtails sometimes will show the wefts when you pull the hair off to the sides. So when I do pigtails, I like to leave a 3rd section to cover the exposed wefts in the back. I start by cutting off some of that extra length, and then I can come back in and straighten it out a little bit. I cut the hair in a vertical chopping motion so it doesn't look too blunt. If you're using a styrofoam head, keep in mind that it is probably a little bit smaller than your actual head. So think about that when deciding the length of the back hair. You'll want to leave it a little bit longer than you think you'll need it, because when you put it on your head, it will probably stretch out a little bit and get a little shorter. Once you're done cutting it, bobby pin it into place with blonde bobby pins, and your wig is all done. And now onto making her outfit. Even though Harley's shirt is more like a 3/4 length baseball tee, I'm just using a plain white t-shirt, and I'm going to start by cutting off the collar, making a point to make my cuts a little bit jagged. And then I'm going to take a piece of cardboard that fits inside the shirt and wrap it in wax paper so that when we're painting the shirt it doesn't stick to the cardboard or bleed through to the other side of the shirt. Using a product called Textile Medium, you can basically turn acrylic paint into fabric paint. You'll want to check the instructions for whatever brand you get, but for mine you mix 2 parts textile medium to 1 part acrylic paint. I kind of just guess with the measurements, it doesn't really need to be exact. Just as long as you stay kind of close to the recommended ratio, you should be fine. If this is intimidating to you, it is perfectly fine to just use a regular red fabric paint as well. The benefit to textile medium is that you can mix it with any color, and buying a lot of different colors of acrylic paint is a lot cheaper than buying lots of different colors of fabric paint. So here I've already started blocking out a little bit of the red on her shirt. Keeping a reference photo nearby will definitely help you with proportions and knowing where you need to paint everything. So this first part is pretty easy. You're just going to make a straight line across and fill it all in with red. Acrylic paint mixed with textile medium will need at least 24 hours to dry, so make sure you have a little bit of time on your hands when doing this project. After 24 hours, you can heat set it gently with an iron to really lock it into place. So now I am mixing up some black paint with textile medium for the lettering on her shirt. For the lettering, I checked my reference photo a lot, then I drew it lightly in pencil on the shirt before coming back over it with black paint. When I was a kid, one of my favorite hobbies was looking at pictures and then recreating them. So I have had lots and lots of practice doing this ever since I was a little kid. But if you don't feel confident in your ability to just freehand it on there, I totally understand that. And I would recommend either using tracing paper or making your own stencil of this pattern that says Daddy's Little Monster and then just stenciling it on there. If you're wondering why I'm going backwards with my lettering here, it is because I'm left-handed and it doesn't take you long to learn that you will smear everything with your hand if you go from left to right. So it's just my personal preference and a thing that I do as a lefty to avoid any unwanted smearing. It's also a good general rule of thumb to start with thinner lines and get the pattern all laid out first, and then come back in and thicken up the lines and clean it all up until you get it looking exactly how you want it. After about a day or two went by and the middle section was dry, I came back and did the stripes on the sleeves. Since the new Harley Quinn is actually wearing a baseball tee, the stripe should be lower and thicker than what I'm doing here, but since I'm doing it as a t-shirt, I can kind of just make up the placement wherever I want. After the front side is dry, flip it over and do the back side so that the stripes go all the way around. So once the painting's all done and the shirt is dry, I cut the bottom of the shirt off so that it's a little bit shorter and so the edge isn't as clean. This shirt was already pretty short because it's a kid size shirt, so you may need to cut off more than what I'm doing here. It just depends on the shirt that you have. Trying it on as you go and using your reference photo is key. So her shirt is definitely not as clean as what we have here. In what's been released so far, the red appears to have bled out all over the place. So the way I'm recreating that bled out effect is by dipping a red washable marker into water and then touching it to the fabric. In theory, when the wet marker touches the shirt, the red ink will spread out and give you that bled out look that her shirt has. I used the scrap fabric that I cut off the bottom of the shirt to test it first to see what the ink would do, and it did exactly what I wanted, so I would definitely recommend giving that a test before you actually do it on your shirt. It's also important to note that once you use a washable ink on the shirt, you can't wash it in the washing machine anymore or dunk it underwater or the ink will go everywhere, so just spot clean the shirt as needed from now on. For the blue sleeve, which is her left sleeve, I'm using leftover ink from when I dyed the wig and mixing it into a container of water. You don't need much of this ink at all, so leftovers are just fine, and I mixed it together with a popsicle stick. So then I just dipped the sleeve into the blue water. Be careful when doing this. I accidentally dropped a lot more of the shirt into the water than I meant to, which turned the whole sleeve blue and smeared a little bit of the red out too. But it's totally fine for this look because it's such a messy look anyway. But then I added a few more drops of the blue ink to the water, and then I dipped just the edge of the sleeve in so that it was darker on the bottom of the sleeve. Make sure you use a towel that you don't care about because it could possibly get stained in the process here. At first I laid the shirt down on the towel to let it dry a little bit initially, and then I hung it up in my bathroom and I laid that same towel down underneath it in case it dripped down onto the floor. After it is completely dry, we can move on to the very last step, which is distressing and making holes in the shirt. If you care at all about making the holes look real, please do not cut them with scissors. You can get holes in the shirt that are 1,000 times better by just rubbing it with sandpaper over and over again until the fabric splits. If you're working on a part of the shirt that allows it, try to push the underneath side of the shirt up so that you're only working on one layer of the t-shirt material at a time. If you can't, that's fine too. It's just a time saver. It'll rip faster if it's the only layer you're rubbing. After you get the front looking how you want it, make sure you don't forget about the back of the shirt. It doesn't seem too likely that she would only get holes in the front, so add holes to the back wherever you want to give it a more complete look. My camera died while I was making the shorts, so I lost a lot of footage from that, but they started as 2 separate pairs of shorts, which I cut in half and sewed together. If you don't know how to sew, no biggie, you can buy these shorts already put together. It's just a little bit more expensive than doing it yourself. And on to accessories, which is my favorite part because the details like this are really what takes your costume to the next level. I'm going to start with the puddin necklace that she wears in the new Suicide Squad movie. Start by getting some clear vinyl from the fabric store. You don't need much of it, just enough to go around your neck and about 2 inches in height. So measure your neck and then cut out a length of vinyl that will fit around your neck. I'm using a rotary cutter, but you can also use scissors if you don't have that. And then put that vinyl strip aside, we'll come back to that, and get out your gold letters and your craft foam. And then you are going to just take the letters that spell puddin, P-U-D-D-I-N, and stick them to the craft foam and cut it out with an X-Acto knife or scissors. I also cut off a little bit of the letter intentionally to make the font a little closer to what it looks like in the reference pictures. The letters that I'm using here are actually letters that are meant to be used on your mailbox, so they're cheap and they're weather resistant and they're strong and they're super reflective and shiny, which is actually pretty perfect for this project. Because they are meant for exterior doors and mailboxes, you can find them in a hardware store or in the home improvement section of like a Target or Walmart or something like that. And now it is time to make this vinyl wearable by sewing snaps on each end of it. You can also do Velcro or any other kind of way to secure each end to each other. Then I will use a tiny little brush to paint the sides of the craft foam with gold acrylic paint to make the sides match the shiny top part of the letter. And then I am using hot glue to attach the letters to the vinyl. I will say that hot glue does not always stick to vinyl. Sometimes it can melt right through the vinyl if you have a thinner vinyl than what I'm using, and sometimes the letters can just peel right off. So hot glue is not always the best way to attach things to vinyl. I think that there is super glue that is specifically made for gluing things to vinyl. I haven't tried it personally, but I think it's something definitely worth looking into. So when Harley isn't wearing her jacket, you can see that she has this awesome studded gun harness and holster. So I wanted to try to make that for this cosplay since I'm not doing the jacket. I found this little gun set at the Halloween store. If you're watching this not at Halloween time, you can probably find them at a toy store. So I started by spray painting them white. I also spray painted the other one white just as a backup because why not? I already had it. And then these little tubes I got in place of grenades that I think she has on her other holster. I know that these don't look like grenades, but they're what I'm using until I can find something that is more grenade shaped. They look right from the front, so for now, that's what we're going with. For the harness, I originally planned to just get black straps and get the studs that you attach yourself, but then when I went to go pick up the strap, I found this already studded strap, so that was easy. I got about 2 yards of it to make sure that I had enough for both sides of the harness. Wrap the first strap around your shoulder and cut it to a length that fits you comfortably. And then I will use sticky Velcro on each end of the strap to attach it in a way that is easy to take on and off. Just cut the Velcro to the size you need, stick the first side on, and then I ended up taking a stud on the other side off with tweezers so that the Velcro could lay flat. Stick the other side of the Velcro on, and then you have yourself a shoulder strap. And then for the other holster, we need to make something to hold these little awkward grenade tubes that we have here. So I'm using black elastic and hot glue to hold these in place. You definitely don't need this much elastic, I just already had it. You only need enough to hold these 2 little containers on the holster. I want this to be stretchy, which is why I'm using elastic, and it does a great job holding them in place. So the upside of having these little tubes here, instead of something that actually looks like a grenade, is that they are in fact containers, so I can put things in them, and that is convenient because this cosplay otherwise has no pockets. For the other shoulder strap, I just laid the first one out nice and flat so that I can make them the same length, and then just like the first one, I remove one of the studs and stick some Velcro on each end. Then I take a leftover bit of strap that I cut off earlier and sew it onto each shoulder strap to hold it together in the back. Cut off the extra piece and your harness is done. The belt is super easy. I think I got the gold studded belt on Amazon for like $8 or something like that. And then I'm going to use polymer clay to make the belt buckle attachment. So start by rolling out some polymer clay. Make it nice and flat like a pancake on your workspace. I am working on wax paper here, and I almost always craft on wax paper because nothing sticks to it, and it protects my desk from whatever craft I'm doing. You can use something square shaped to stamp out a square in the clay. If you can't find anything square shaped, you can just cut it out without it. Just do the best you can to make it square. Then cut out a smaller square on the inside of the square, so it starts to look like a buckle. Once you have it all cut out, clean up the shape and make it as neat as possible. Then bake the little square shape according to the directions on your polymer clay package. After it was baked and hardened, I decided to paint it gold even though it's already gold, but it wasn't the right shade, so I'm just using some gold acrylic paint to try to match it to the studs on the belt. After the paint is all dry, I added some Velcro to the back side of our new clay buckle and the other side of the Velcro to the belt. I decided to do this as an attachment instead of an actual buckle because in my reference pictures you can see the entire diamond shape, and if it was actually a buckle, part of it would probably be covered up. So for me, an attachment works just fine. Once I had it all attached, I decided the original gold buckle was distracting, so I painted it black and it made it much better. Finally, our last tutorial within a huge tutorial is for Harley's bat. First, you gotta get yourself a bat. I found this one at a used sports store for like $7. It's a T-ball bat, so it's not quite as big as Harley's bat. So we'll have to make a few design modifications due to it being much smaller. But we'll start the same way, which is going to be sanding the bat down to get the clear coat seal off of it, and also if it has any words like how this one says Franklin T-ball, we want to take that off. So rub the whole bat down with sandpaper to prep it for paint. Once it's all prepped, we got our supplies here. We have some lettering stencils. I think these are for fabric paint, so I found them in the t-shirt section of the craft store. You want to make sure that the stencil you're getting is flexible. Because the surface of the bat is rounded, a stiffer stencil wouldn't really work for this particular project. Stenciling on a rounded surface is definitely tough, so just hold it in place as best you can, and using a spongy stencil brush, apply a light coat of red paint that spells out the word goodnight. Before moving on to the next letter, make sure that the letter before it is completely dry, or else you will smear it with the stencil. A helpful practice that I learned while doing this is that if the letter you're working on is on the edge of the stencil, you can tape it in place on one side, and it makes it a lot easier to hold the stencil in place on the rounded surface. If the letter is not on the edge, good luck. The design change that I'm going to make is because the word goodnight is likely going to take up this entire bat because it's so small. The top of Harley's bat says goodnight, and it also has this diamond shape and some writing on it, and then the base is wrapped in white tape. I'm not going to have room for that, so I'm just going to write goodnight at the top and then put the diamond shape on the handle instead of the white tape. If I'm going to have to cut something in the design, I feel like the diamond is a lot more recognizable for the character, which is why I'm cutting the white tape. I'm also going to hold off on adding all of the black words that she has written all over the bat until we can tell what that says, because at this point it's still pretty unclear with what has already been released. But once we know what it says for sure, I will add it on with black paint and a tiny little paintbrush. So after I finish stenciling the word goodnight and let it all dry, I'll come back in with an X-Acto knife to clean up some of the letters that got a little bit messy. You can just use the sharp edge to chip off the paint where it doesn't belong. Because the handle of my bat was already black, I don't have to paint it that way, so that's great, I can skip that step. And now I'm going to use painter's tape to block off the black bands that are at the top and bottom of the diamond design. Basically this is so I don't accidentally paint the black areas a color I don't want them to be. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit confusing. I am hoping I'll be able to explain the measuring and math side of what I did here, but I really just made it up as I went along, so if this makes no sense at all, just freehand some diamonds on there, it'll be okay. So basically, I made 4 marks around the top and bottom of the handle, equal distances around the base. My bat is small, so they were about 2 centimeters apart. Then I connected each of those dots, making vertical lines down the base of the handle. Next, I found the middle of the vertical lines by measuring the distance and dividing it in half. And then at the halfway point, I made a horizontal line that went all the way around the handle. Then connecting the dots between the vertical lines and the horizontal lines with diagonal lines, you should be able to make 2 perfect diamond shapes. I know that was extremely confusing, and if it made no sense, just draw yourself a diamond. It doesn't have to be perfect. Then using painter's tape, I'm going to cover the entire diamond area so that I can paint the base red without getting any red paint in the diamonds. Once our tape is all set, I'm going to use red acrylic paint and a spongy stencil brush to dab on the red paint. I ended up doing 2 thin coats of the red paint to make sure that the black underneath wouldn't show through. After the red paint is dry, peel the diamond tape off. Then I'm going to tape up the diamond again, this time leaving a thin line around the outer edge of the diamond exposed. Then use tape to cover up all of the red area, leaving us with the outline of a thin diamond, which we will paint a tan color, a color as close as you can to the color of your bat. Dab on the paint along the diamond that we've made. I ended up doing 3 coats of this tan color to be sure the black underneath was covered. Once that's dry, peel up the tape in and around the diamond. I then used red paint on a little tiny brush to clean up any spots that managed to get under the tape. And now for the last one, I'm going to tape off everything except for the inner diamond, which I'm going to paint a navy blue. I did 2 coats of the navy blue, and once it dried, I peeled off the tape and cleaned up the edges with the tan paint. All that's left to do now is to remove the tape that's covering the black areas and clean up those edges, and now we are done. And now for the best part, which is trying on the costume and seeing all of your hard work come together, and seeing a character that you really love come to life.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something, or even if you just saw a cool technique that you want to use in a different costume. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you decide to make this costume, please, please, please share it with me on Instagram or Twitter or wherever. I really want to see what you guys make. I'm happy you stopped by. I love having you guys here. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!